My guest today is author John L Flynn, PhD. Mr. Flynn has authored 20 books, including the best-selling novel Murder on Air Force One. He's a member of the Mystery Writers of America and the Science Fiction Writers of America. From 2002 to 2004, he was nominated for the prestigious Hugo Award for his superior science fiction writing. In 2005, his script, The Jovian Dilemma, was runner-up at the Screenplay Festival. In 2014, his mystery thriller, Intimate Bondage, was a complete sellout at the Romance Writers Conference in San Antonio, Texas. The success of Intimate Bondage motivated him to write a series of novels centered on a female homicide detective with a troubled past. The series has 5 entries to date, including the aforementioned Intimate Bondage, Architects of Armageddon, Murder on Air Force One, Terror at the G20, and The Merchants of Death. He has a PhD in psychology and an MA in English. He spent 32 years as a college dean at the University of Maryland. Go Maryland! He taught creative writing there. His name might sound familiar to you because he was instrumental in helping Erica James, who wrote 50 Shades of Grey, to research BDSM, and in books 2 and 3, she named Christian Grey psychologist Dr. John Flynn after him. So we're here to talk about his latest book, which is out, I believe, on August 18th. And this book is a biography of actress and showgirl Angelique Pettyjohn. The title of the book is The Sci-Fi Siren Who Dared Love Elvis and Other Stars. So how did you get motivated to write this book about Angelique?
Well, that is a fairly simple question. We got to know each other for the last 10 years of her life. And on her deathbed, she knew she was dying of cervical cancer. Oh. She only had a few weeks to go. And she said to me, she says, John, you know more about me than anybody else because of the friendship that developed between us. And she said, I want to ask you a favor. And I said, what's the favor? And she said to me, would you write my story? And of course, I immediately said yes.
Yeah.
I thought she was such an amazing woman. And again, the friendship that developed between us was so extraordinary, better than marriages and things of that nature. And even though I think I probably would have made a good husband for her. Of course I said yes, but what I didn't realize was just how incredible the story that she had told me was, and how many intersections with so many real life celebrities, and of course Elvis Presley and others, that I was going to have to research. And so I started the year after she passed away. She passed away in 1992, excuse me. And I started writing about her in 1993. And oh my goodness, it just was like opening up one mystery box after another. And 28 years later,
wow.
the book was done. Now, of course, I'm writing other things in the meantime, but this was more than a mystery tale that I was telling. It was multiple mystery tales. And so I just finished it 2019, and it is actually out already on Amazon. They like to push things out early, so you can actually get an early copy now on Amazon. But all of the other retailers, that will be the 18th of August, as you said. So you had those details correct.
Yay! I am so excited. I tell you, I can't wait to read it, because it seems to me that Angelique was just such an amazing person, and she had such a incredible life, being around so many people and getting to know Elvis. Pretty interesting life. So tell me, who is Angelique Pettyjohn? Like, give us a little insight into who she is and why she is somebody that we should read about.
Well, in my introduction, and it is part of my prologue to the book, I list about 10 different, probably 12 different words for her, such as showgirl, actress, mother, friend, just go right on down the line, femme fatale, screen queen, all of these different things. She played many different roles in her life. And I would say that what she wanted to be known for was as an entertainer. Just like the kinds of entertainers that she grew up watching, Danny Kaye, Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, even Elvis Presley. And that's what, if there's a legacy, and there's one word for that legacy, is that she loved entertaining people. And she would love it for us to call her that entertainer.
Wow. That I can completely relate to that, because I enjoy entertaining as well. And that's why I dabble in so many different genres of entertainment. So
you guys would have been best friends.
I think so. Out of curiosity, like, when was her birthday? When was she born?
Well, that's kind of interesting. She was born 10 years after my mother was born on the same day. Unbelievable. March 11th, 1943. My mother was born March 11th, 1933. And I introduced the two of them. They just had so much in common together. It was amazing, really.
Yeah. Well, some people are into this astrology stuff, and so I guess she was she in Aquarius?
Pisces.
Pisces, okay.
Right.
Oh, so she was a dreamer.
Oh, yes, she was.
Oh,
yeah.
that's exciting.
She had these incredible dreams. And in fact, when I first write about her in chapter 1, I refer to the chapter as Humble Beginnings. At 4 years old, she would run around and tell everyone, I'm going to be a big star someday. And she says, I'm going to sing, I'm going to dance, and people are going to love me. And that is absolutely true. I talked with people that had known her when she was a little girl like that. And, she was this, what I call a small town girl with these big Hollywood or show business dreams. And, if you'd seen her, she had little buck teeth. She didn't look particularly pretty when she was a little girl. Most children are gorgeous children. She wasn't. And, whenever she would say that to, the neighbors or to her teachers, everyone would go, yeah, right. But for those of us that knew her, we saw that. There was a quality about her that, was just part of her aura, if you will, that she was going to be this big name person. And, even I have 185 different pictures of her in my book. It's amazing. And if you just take a look at her picture when she was a teenager, she was drop dead gorgeous as a teenager. And she didn't have any boyfriends. I was always surprised by that. Mm-hmm. And she always had her mindset on being involved in show business somehow. I mean, in her high school, she went to West High School in Salt Lake City. She was always involved in the drama department, and she played the lead role in all of the different shows she did. Arsenic and Old Lace was her favorite one.
Oh, I love that movie. Yes.
She played one of the dotty old aunts, and she just succeeded in everything she did. Now, what's interesting is I write in that chapter, Humble Beginnings, she had a mother and father like most of us. Her father was an older man who went to war, World War II, mm-hmm. and served with distinction. He was with the Army Air Corps, and he and his team were responsible for all of the airdrops. So if soldiers needed to go in someplace, they would drop the soldiers there. If there were supplies needed, he would drop the supplies. But unfortunately, World War II took a toll on him. And when he came back from the war, he had this 4-year-old little girl, and he couldn't even hug her.
Oh.
And so Angelique's mother divorced the dad, and they went to live with family in Salt Lake City. And the unfortunate thing was her mom came from Germany. They escaped Germany before World War II broke out. But her mom was somewhat of a cold fish also. And so here's poor Angelique. She's growing up in a household, where there really isn't a love figure, if you will. There's not a mother figure there, a father figure. And she found the theater was her outlet for love. She said, the first time I stepped on stage, I knew I was home. And, when she heard the applause from the audience, she said, that meant love to me. And so, even though her parents didn't give her the love she wanted, she found it with her audience. And that's why I say calling her an entertainer is absolutely perfect description of who she was. Even as a little girl and through the last days of her life, that was where she found the most happiness.
Was she born in Utah?
She was born in the shadows of Los Angeles. They could actually see the bright lights from Hollywood, from where she was born. And, her mother and dad had met in LA, and they had gotten married there. And then, of course, war broke out. And when he came back, he was just not the same person. He would have had what we call post-traumatic stress syndrome today, but they didn't call it that back in those days. I think it was, battle fatigue or something was what they called it. And so, she had grown up with Hollywood being right there, but, her mother dragged her off to Salt Lake City. Her mother met a man there, and they fell in love, got married, and she had a whole family with this other man. But the thing of it was, she had 2 stepsisters, she had a stepbrother. They got all the love, and she didn't get any of that, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah. It's very interesting because there's so many studies about that, about getting human touch and how that affects us as human beings. So I'm sorry to hear that she had to go through that. But so why Utah?
Well, her mom had family there, and so it just seemed like the right place to go, and that's where they went. And after the war was over, there were very few men coming back because they'd either been killed off or they had fallen in love with Europe and decided to stay.
Yeah.
And so it was just so unlikely that her mom, her mom's nickname was Mickey. It was so unlikely that her mom would meet a man and then fall in love and then have a complete family. But that's how it worked out. Her mom was not an attractive woman, and she was also so stern and so serious all the time. I'm surprised that actually worked out, but that's how it did. She did have issues with her mom throughout most of her life, and when her mom died, I believe it was 1972 or 3. She came home from working on a movie. She got leave to go back to Salt Lake City, and she hadn't been back in years. And her stepsisters didn't want to have anything to do with her. Her stepfather didn't, and she went out to the gravesite after her mom had been buried, and she broke down right there at the gravesite and said, "Mom, why didn't you ever love me?"
Wow.
And she says, I've had to look for your love so many other places. And she never went back to see her mom after that. That was the last visit home, so to speak.
Wow. Well, going back to what you said about her mom not being really attractive and being able to find a husband and have a whole other family, there's hope for the rest of us.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Amazing. So we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with John L. Flynn. So I want to read an excerpt from the book. I thought this was like so interesting. So it says Angelique Pettyjohn was groomed and pampered to be the next Marilyn Monroe by the studio system. But on her way to stardom, she took a slight detour and became an icon in her own right, beloved by millions of fans worldwide. This is the incredible true life story of the girl in the silver bikini who dared to love Elvis Presley and give the king of rock and roll his only son. Very interesting. It also says she taught Captain Kirk on his Star Trek how to make love to alien women. She outsmarted secret agent Maxwell Smart, spied on the girl from U.N.C.L.E., came between TV's Batman and Robin, put the sting back in the Green Hornet, showed partner Bruce Lee as Kato a few fast moves, headlined several sci-fi movies as an unforgettably sexy Siren, was picked up as a hooker on the top-rated Hill Street Blues, and proved that women over 40 were shagadelic, baby. She was also a Las Vegas showgirl, exotic dancer, model, femme fatale, scream queen, comedian, Playboy pinup, suburban housewife, and friend. Amazing. And then it goes on to say that during her 30-year career in show business, Angelique Pettyjohn always lit up the stage or screen with her splashy personality and sexy good looks. Oh my gosh. So tell me about all these guys that she dated in Hollywood.
Well, you know, it all starts. She graduated from high school early at age 17. And what she wanted to do was go to the local community college and study stage work, you know, acting and making costumes and so on. And she knew the only way she was going to be able to do that was if she got a job. So she went to Las Vegas, which wasn't far away from Salt Lake City. And at age 17, she lied about her age. She said she was 18, but at age 17, she got a job working in Las Vegas as a showgirl. And, you know, again, she was just a youngster there, but she was drop dead gorgeous. And she, you know, even though we always refer to her as sort of a bimbo character, she was not. She was a smart cookie. She knew exactly what she wanted to do and needed to do. And so here she is sharing a room with two other girls, going to dance lessons during the day, and then working on in a show production in Las Vegas. Unbelievable. And so while she was, before she started meeting all these celebrity guys, she had to go to her first party, and she and her girls kept hearing about the parties that Elvis threw when he was in Las Vegas. Well, believe it or not, he and his mafia gang, his Memphis Mafia, rolled into the Sahara. They were in between movies, and Elvis wanted to blow off some steam. And so they put out a call for all the showgirls to come to his party. And his parties were like Roman bacchanals, with lots of sex and drugs and rock and roll. And Angelique and her two friends went to one of those parties. And she had just turned 18. So
Wow.
this was, she turned 18 in on March 11th. And so this is like March 12th or 13th, a couple of days later. And who zooms in on her? Well, of course, Elvis Presley.
Wow.
And, you know, he took one good look at her. I mean, she had a 38C bust line. She had these long dancer's legs, a beautiful face, beautiful hair. I mean, you know, that would be any man, believe me. If she walked into the party, they would all zoom in on her. And they started talking, and they spent the entire night together. Sometimes he would be singing to her on the piano, and she'd say, "Oh, could you please sing Love Me Tender?"
Aw.
And then they were talking about life and the universe, the whole thing. And there was a connection there that was just storybook. And of course, when he asked her if she was still a virgin, of course she said yes, she was. And he could not believe that. Here's a woman working in the sex industry, if you will, certainly in Sin City,
Yeah.
and she's still a virgin. So, that was like waving a red flag in front of a bull, because not only did Elvis like showgirls, he liked them young and he liked them brand new, as virgins. And so they spent the night together. And he was crazy about her. I wouldn't say he was in love with her, but he was crazy about her, and she was dead, no doubt about it, in love with him. And they ended up, he had to go on to Hawaii with his Memphis Mafia, because they were starting work on the movie Blue Hawaii in just a few days.
Yes.
And so when he got there, he remembered her and called her several times from the set and said, do you think you could get free for a couple days and come see me in Hawaii? Well, what is she going to say? And he said, I'll wire you the ticket. I'll make all of the arrangements. I'll get your room here. And of course, that's exactly what she did. And she was there on the set with him for about 3 or 4 days. And they ran into Hal Wallace. Unfortunately, Hal Wallace was the producer on Blue Hawaii.
Uh-huh.
And he had set out an edict which said Elvis was not to have any parties, and he was not to fraternize with any of the women on the set. So Elvis had to do some quick thinking, and he said, you know what? I'm going to tell Hal Wallace, this is just one of the extras. She just came in for the day to do one of the beach scenes. And so that's the reason why most people think that, the two of them got together on Blue Hawaii, but actually it happened earlier than that. And so she went home and home back to Las Vegas and picked up her dancing. And he went on to, make this film. He called her several times, once from the Paramount lot where they're editing the film, and he was looping, dialogue and that sort of thing. And, but they never got together again after that, so she had this wonderful night with him, a couple of days in Hawaii, and that was it. Now, surprise, surprise, several weeks go by, and things are changing in her body.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, she is pregnant, and she does not know what to do. Now, her mom was Lutheran. She was raised in a Lutheran church, and the last thing that she was going to do was have an abortion, particularly with the king's child.
Yeah.
So she didn't know what to do. One of her girlfriends suggested that maybe she should talk to Colonel Parker, which was Elvis's manager. And you know what? He realized that if there was some type of hanky-panky going on, that was going to hurt that image, and there was this wonderful image of this Christian young boy who only, kissed girls on the second date and all of this other stuff. They had really built up this image of Elvis. And if it came out that he had been sleeping around, particularly with a showgirl like Angelique, that was going to ruin the revenue stream. And that was all that Colonel Parker was interested in. So he went to work on Angelique. He tried to talk her into an abortion. Again, she wouldn't have anything of that kind. So she did finally agree to have the baby, but then give it up for adoption. And so, Elvis was never to know about this. This was all to be kept secret behind the scenes, so to speak. And Colonel Parker set up a hotel room for her in Chicago on the south side. I mean, you're almost to Gary, Indiana, when you where you were, where she was. And so she watched all the news, and she kept clippings of how Blue Hawaii was doing when it premiered. It premiered the Thanksgiving weekend, and it did beautiful business. And um, she ended up having the child December 24th. It was a snowy day, and it was the day before Christmas. And out popped this beautiful baby boy,
Oh.
jet black hair, just like Elvis. Okay. And what Colonel Parker had arranged was to have the baby adopted by circus performers. Their names were Anna and Jacob Stanek, and they were known as the Vargas performers. They did high wire acts and things like that. And she, the reason why Parker did that was he had been raised by circus performers himself, and he thought that this would have been a really good opportunity for the baby. And so, at a Gary, Indiana hospital, they took the baby, and the last thing that Angelique said to them was, "Please take care of this boy. He belongs to Elvis."
Wow.
And so the Staniks were supposed to keep the secret also until the boy was 21. And so Angelique, unfortunately, went back to the hospital, had a few things done to her that she wasn't aware was being done to her, and then she went back to Las Vegas. And Colonel Parker gave her lots of money, and she refused to take anything from him other than lost wages. And she boarded a bus. She wasn't going to fly home, and she took the bus home. Now, what she didn't know was Parker had arranged with the hospital personnel to have her insides cleaned out so she could never have another child. And it was a horrible, horrible thing that was done to her. Because I knew throughout the time when I knew her, she always regretted that she never had any children other than, you know, the child with Elvis. And so she went back to Vegas and she tried to pick her life back up. And that, you know, that is sort of where the story ends, but not quite. She did see Elvis again several years later. She was more established as an actress at that point, and actually worked on the movie Clambake. And Colonel Parker, because he was sort of a control freak, he was into everything. When he found out that she had been hired for Clambake, he tried to get her removed from the film, couldn't do that. There were contracts. So what he did was she was going to be the love interest in the film. He had Shelley Fabre, I'm sure you know who Shelley Fabre was, very established actress also. Mm-hmm. She had Shelley Fabre replace Angelique as the love interest. And Angelique became the second love interest, really, of Bill Bixby in the movie. Colonel Parker didn't want to take the chance that the two of them would get talking and she would let slip that, you know, she had had his baby. So right after Clambake was wrapped production, Elvis married Priscilla. And that was really the end of the story there. In 1977, when Elvis passed away, she had heard the news on the radio, and she flew to Memphis to pay her respects. And when she walked by Elvis, this is again her talking to me about this. She said, "I saw that beautiful face of his, those kissable lips," because she always talked about what a good kisser he was. But apparently, and this will hurt Elvis fans, he wasn't that much in the sack, according to.
Whoa! The ultimate.
Yeah. But when she saw his face and the lips and all of that, she said, "I have to find another man like Elvis," because she loved Elvis, and now that he was gone, it was up to her to find, you know, the next man. And so she really spent the rest of her life. She married 4 men. Those things didn't work out. She had boyfriends galore. I mean, Warren Beatty, George Peppard, Richard Pryor, Adam West. I mean, she had hundreds of celebrity boyfriends, and I think she was testing them all out.
Yeah.
She was most crazy for Christopher Jones, and in fact, if it hadn't been for things going on behind the scenes. She may have married Christopher Jones. You may know that name from Ryan's daughter. He was the young officer who falls in love with Ryan's daughter, even though she was married to another man. And she was crazy about um, what's his name? Hogan from Hogan's Heroes. Bob Crane. Thank you. I had to look at my notes. And
Wow.
in fact, they had a long-term running affair, even though Bob Crane was married to someone else.
Oh.
And then she met John Ashley, who was a heartthrob like Elvis, on the Mad Doctor of Blood Island, the horror movie she did. And John Ashley was sort of, a young heartthrob like Elvis. And they had an affair while they were making the movie. In fact, they were supposed to be having simulated sex on the movie, but Angelique told me it was all real. It was all live sex that they had. But when they got back home, that their affair was over. So she spent really her life looking for a replacement for Elvis. And all of these men, that she met them on the Sunset Strip, and they had homes up in the Hollywood Hills. And it was not uncommon for her to meet some guy in the evening when she was out with her girlfriends hanging out, and then end up back at one of their homes. In fact, she tells the story about Christopher Jones. She met him for the first time. Now, he was a very handsome guy. He had played a cowboy. She thought he was actually a cowboy, but not. And a lot of women, thought he was just the cat's meow, if you will, from that time period. And she met him at a bar. And when he went back to the men's room, to take care of business, she followed him back to the men's room. And they had, a little tryst back in the men's room. So, that's how she operated often.
Yeah.
Interesting note was one of the trysts she had with Christopher Jones was actually in the second house that was behind the house where Sharon Tate was murdered by the Manson family.
Oh yeah. Wow.
So anyway, she lived throughout that whole time period, and so anyway, I feel sorry for her. She never found that love of her life. She tried suburban life with a couple of men. The first man she married was 22 years her senior, and I guess she was looking for like a father figure there. And he ended up giving her last name, Pettyjohn. That was his family name. And he worked as like a manager for her. But none of the other men worked out. And she spent her 40 plus years always looking and never finding that replacement for Elvis.
Wow. And was Angelique her actual name?
Oh, she was born. Well, we probably should have covered it earlier, but it's all right. She was born Dorothy Lee Parents, and it was a very sort of common name. A lot of people were naming their daughters after Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, and
Yes.
so when she was working in the show business, she took on the name first Dorothy Harmony, and then later she took on the name Angelique, and then finally Angelique Pettyjohn. And so, yeah, and this man was pretty good to her, even though he was older. He, first time when he asked her to marry him, she said yes, and then he bought her a Volkswagen Beetle. She didn't have a car, so she could get around. I mean, he just pulled it out of his wallet and said, "I'm going to buy it off the lot for you." So
Nice.
a lot of men took good care of her, but she could never find that proper mix that was there that she had with Elvis. How
Yeah,
sad that is.
I know. Well, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. So I've been staring at your shirt. Is that artwork from the book?
Yeah, it is.
Yes, please show us the book. For those of you listening on the radio, pretty soon you'll be able to watch this episode on YouTube. So you'll get to see the book, the cover of the book. Pretty cool. So that was from which movie? That was the picture is of her in which movie?
This is from Star Trek.
Ah,
This is how most people know her.
yeah.
So, but you know, this was actually shot years after she did the Star Trek episode,
Oh, okay. Um,
and this was shot by a very famous photographer
I
by
can't
the name of
see you
Rob.
anymore.
What's that? Did I
I
lose you?
can't see. Yeah, I can't see you anymore. Your video for some reason is off.
Oh, you know, somebody called in.
Oh,
Let's see if
there
we
we
get
go.
back.
Yes.
Back again. All right. I was saying this was shot by Robert Scott Hooper, a very famous photographer, and he shot two of these, one in costume, one with her nude,
Yeah.
that she sold at the Star Trek conventions, and the people went absolutely crazy for it. But doesn't she look like a Barbie doll? Seriously.
Absolutely. She does. I mean, even her face and everything, it's just amazing. And her body, it's like, looks just like a Barbie doll.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of Barbie dolls,
Yes. Oh, wow. So for those of you listening on the radio, it's a Barbie wearing this silver bikini. It's so cool. And it looks just like Angelique Pettyjohn looks on the cover of the book. Where did you get that?
I made this up because Junior and I were having a discussion about it. You'll learn about Junior in a minute here. And he said, you know, we should get a Barbie doll made up of her. And poof, there she came into being.
Very cool. She even has the green hair. Very nice. So Junior, you referenced Junior, and I want to say as well that I've followed the Elvis story and Priscilla and his daughter. I've never before heard of Junior being mentioned.
Believe it or not, while I was working on the book about Angelique, and honestly, I hadn't followed Elvis Presley. I came out of the generation that loved Jim Morrison and the Doors. I'm not Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
But I was working on the book, and I kept hearing references to, during my research, to Elvis and Presley Jr. And I'm thinking, what the heck is this all about? But then, you know, I knew what it was about because I had been in court and had seen him given the name Elvis, but I wanted to know what the reality of all of this was. And so I called his manager and we spoke on the phone. And I said, you know, I know you. I was in court the day you got the name. And he says, were you really? And I says, no, not only was I there, I was there with your mom. And he says, oh my God, I wish you had said something. And so we had this beautiful conversation. It lasted about 2 hours. And after we were off the phone, I felt like I had been talking with another brother, you know, brother from another mother, you know, that
Yeah.
saying. He was such a lovely man, very kind, very humble, and truly gifted. I've listened to his music. He sounds so much like his father. But, you know, we were talking about mysteries earlier. Um, During our time when we were getting to know each other, and she said, I really need someone that can come with me to court. And I said, sure, you know, whatever you need, I'm here for you.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, I can't tell you much about it, but, you know, would you come to court with me? And obviously I said yes. Court was, I was living in Baltimore at the time. Court was in Las Vegas, which is where she was working in Las Vegas at the time. And I flew out there. I met her, and we went into court. And she says, "Now we're looking for information about about a man named Philip Stanek." And I said, "Sure. What's it all about?" And she says, "I'll tell you later." So we're sitting on these benches that were made back in Fred Flintstone's day. They, they were old benches, and they were not kind to my bottom.
Yeah.
Uh, and I was going to take a short nap, but you know, he came up rather first. And so he was there for a name change, according to the judge in the courtroom. And the name was going to be changed from Philip Stanek to Elvis Aaron Presley Jr. And I go, oh my God, this is the connection that I've been, wanting to, find all about. And so he had to present lots of information. You know how most courts, they want you to give everything in terms of documentary evidence about who you are. This is sort of right before everybody was doing, um, uh, blood tests, and we're checking for DNA evidence.
Yeah.
And so he presented so much information. I mean, it was a stack of information. And the judge went through it, and the judge said, I'm going to rule in your favor. He hits the gavel, and that was it. By the time I realized what this was all about, Angelique had left the courtroom. And I
Oh.
thought, and we had been sitting there, we'd been holding hands, and she had gotten up and left the courtroom. And so quickly I got up and I went after her to find out if she was okay. She was in tears, and she was by the elevator. She kept pushing the down button. You know how people do that when
Yeah.
the elevator doesn't automatically come. And I said, what's wrong? What's wrong? Who was Philip Stanek? And she said, he was my son. And I said, your son? How come I've never heard of this before? And she said, I was not able to have any other children, but I had a brief affair with Elvis Presley, and he was the result of that. And I just could not believe it. And so it, brought everything sort of full circle. And then, when Elvis and I talked on the phone, it was well after Angelique had passed away, and we hit it off again like brothers. And I refer to him now as Junior. And he is such a great guy. I mean, I got to know his mother, and a lot of what he has gotten to know about his mother came from me.
Oh, wow. Pretty
And so he never had a relationship with her. And of course, he didn't have a relationship with Elvis either.
right.
And so this was a very emotional time for Angelique. I said to her, I said, you should have gone up and said something to him and said, look, I'm your mother. And she said, no, he hates me because I gave him up for adoption. I said, how do you know that? And she says, well, wouldn't you hate me if I had given you up for adoption? And I said, no. I said, and if even if he does, the gesture on your part would go miles. And she just didn't have it in her to do that. But she was not a perfect person. She had a lot of things going not right with her in terms of her life. And in
Well,
fact,
you did say in your book that she faced demons often of her own making. So you're a psychologist. So tell us a little bit about what you meant by that.
well, I will tell you that when she was a child, she started hearing these voices in her head. Now, we're not talking about crazy stuff here. She kept hearing in her head, you're not worth it. You're not fit. You're never going to make anything of yourself.
Self-talk.
Yes, exactly. And this was all downer talk, really. And she associated that talk with her mother, because her mother had said this to her so many times. What makes you think that you're going to be pretty enough, or you're going to be able to dance well enough, or act well enough? You're one of a million other people that want to do the same thing. And so she really took it to heart, because this is her mother, the person that's supposed to be loving her. And in fact, this was not at all the case. And so when she heard these voices in her head, the only way that she knew how to get rid of them was to overeat. And she was fat as a young girl from overeating.
Hmm.
And then she discovered cigarette smoking, and her dad used to like to drink gin and other things, and she would raid the liquor cabinet. And she was, at age 12 she was smoking, at age 14 she was drinking.
Oh.
And so, we usually call people like this, that have problems like this, an addictive personality. And she fit that exactly. So if it wasn't the alcoholism, when she got into show business, cocaine was always floating around. The other girls would be smoking marijuana. She would do that too. And then, of course, as the drugs got to be fancier drugs like ecstasy or Valium or Xanax, she had to do all of those. And, following her brief affair with Elvis, she also started with what I would call early sex addiction. And she started sleeping with just about any man that she found, might be that substitute for Elvis. And I actually wrote my doctoral dissertation about sex addiction back in the days when people actually didn't believe that it existed. Today more people are open to accepting that. But
Yeah.
so she had alcoholism, drugs, and sex addiction all working against her.
Wow.
And, I blame it on the fact that, she didn't have the love that she really needed in a formative age to set her on the right path. And so she was always substituting these things for that. And unfortunately, her third husband, and I'm not going to name names, they're in the book, so if people want to know who that is, um, he um, he was into being an abusive man, and he would say often many of those same things that the voices in her head were saying, that she wasn't worthwhile, that she didn't belong, and all of these terrible things. And she took all of that to heart. And why would my husband be telling me this if it wasn't true? And that led to her getting involved in adult films. And when I say adult films, we used to refer to adult films as pornography.
Yeah.
Involved in pornography. She did half a dozen pornographic films, and that was to support $1,000 a month addiction that she had. And
Wow.
apparently there was a lot of money to be made back in those days. She was friendly with Marilyn Chambers, one of the regular girls in the adult film series, and she talked her into trying this out. And so she was able to make a lot of money very fast, but then it went out the other door with her different addictions. And so
Now,
um,
was it the same back then as it is now, where it's very graphic?
it was very, very graphic. Yes, I've seen all of the movies. They're very graphic, and they have her doing things that she would never in real life do.
Yeah.
But this is what she needed to do. She had reached a sort of a crossroads in her life where we often talk about the casting couch,
Yes.
and we sort of kind of laugh it off, but it's very true. And there have been producers recently who have been convicted of this. I don't have to go into the current history of those people, and we don't want to bring undue attention to your show, but she was often the victim of the casting couch. And she would often say, and later she would say to me, she says, these men would come at me with these wonderful offers for work, but only after she slept with them or did certain things with them. There
Yeah.
was even one man that had a sexual contract worked out with her that he wanted her to sign for all of the different things he was going to do with her. And she said, "No way, I'm going to do that." And she says, "I really feel sorry for your wife."
Oh, goodness.
And so with her being at this sort of crossroads where she had gotten as far as she could go with her career, but then she was supposed to submit to all of these men. um she said, "I might as well do adult films
Yeah.
rather than do this sort of thing." And it's a shame. If she had been alive today, she would have been so happy with our modern courts and what we've been able to do with people like this. But of course, in her day, if you spoke up, you were blacklisted, and then you never got to work again.
Yeah.
So it was very, a very, very sort of sad situation there. So,
Wow. Well, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with John L. Flynn, author of the book. Tell us the name of the book.
right, the Sci-Fi Siren, Who Dared Love Elvis and Other Stars.
So, Dr. Flynn, as I mentioned to you before, I'm a big movie buff. I love movies. And in your book, you say that Angelique starred in 40 movies and appeared in 12 television series. I mean, that's pretty amazing. That's a lot of work.
It is indeed. And, most of us remember Angelique. If you remember Angelique at all, it was from her appearance on Star Trek. And she was literally the girl in the silver bikini and go-go boots. And, people loved that role that she had. And, she starts out kind of stiff at the beginning of the episode. But, then she warms to Captain Kirk and his charm. And I don't know if you followed Star Trek when it was first on TV. Captain Kirk got all of the women on the show. Okay, they cut away to a commercial when he was in the clinches with a woman, and then they'd come back and he'd be sitting on the edge of his bed pulling on his boots. So he didn't take his boots off to show her his boots. So so if it was a beautiful woman, Captain Kirk of course had to get her, and they were actually quite good on the show. Again, she starts out sort of as a militant character. She's supposed to be a drill thrall, so she's in charge. And
Yeah.
by the end, of course they're in love, and she wants to follow him to the stars. And so everyone remembers her mostly from that. But I'll call attention to a couple of other things as well. She was on Get Smart, and I don't know if you remember that series. That was a very funny series about a bumbling secret agent.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
she played Charlie Watkins on the show. Now, Charlie Watkins on the show was a secret agent who was a master of disguise. And so whenever you'd see Angelique showing up, that's actually a man dressed up as this beautiful woman. And so when Angelique opens her mouth, a man's voice comes out. She was so popular to fans of that show, they kept writing in and say, "We want more episodes with Charlie Watkins." And so, she did that. But I also want to call attention to the fact, yes, she was a gorgeous woman. She did so many shows in Vegas.
Uh-huh.
And of those 40 movies she did, not all of them were just as a bimbo, as this beautiful woman. She did a movie with Liza Minnelli that was called "Tell Me That You Love Me, Junie Moon," and Otto Preminger directed her in that movie. And
Wow.
she got the best reviews of her career by playing this awful mother that did something to her son, and her son is one of the friends that Liza Minnelli has in the movie. And it was a pivotal role. Without her playing this evil mother, these characters would not have been created that way. And so Preminger, had been married to a stripper, and he directed Angelique. He knew that she had talent as an actress. She wasn't just, a beautiful body. She was a smart woman with lots of talent. And he directed her, and she got the best reviews of her career by working with Preminger. I could imagine if there was a Steven Spielberg or Martin Scorsese today working with her, she would have been out front and one of these very well-known actresses.
Mhm.
I was telling you the story before we got started about how during the time of the Star Trek conventions, this was years after she had been on Star Trek,
Yeah.
she was signing autographs at a table, and I often helped her, with that. Ran and got her drinks and food and all of that stuff. But some of the men that came by the table, I recognized. I'd say, "Oh, that's Alex Koch there, a well-known director. Mike Jitloff, director producer. Jim Wynorski, director producer." They would come by the table and they would say to her, and I'd eavesdrop. I'd hear them saying, "I was in love with you when you were on Star Trek." And she says, "Oh, thank you so much." They would say, "What are you doing now?" And she says, "Well, and I mostly, come to the conventions and sign off. Listen, I've got a part for you in my next
Wow.
movie." And so here she is, over 40 years old, when most women actresses her age were retiring from the business because there were no parts for them. They had parts for her in her various movies. And so in the 80s, and this includes, probably a dozen movies from the 80s, she had kind of a renaissance. And people started noticing her again. And, her popularity went back up to where it was back in the day when she was doing Star Trek. And it was a wonder to see that. It was a few years before she passed away, but it was just beautiful to see it.
Amazing. That, it's so incredible because it's good to hear these stories, to also understand that sometimes our self-talk is what kind of keeps us from shining, because
Yes.
she sounds like such an incredible person and talented, but because of these demons that you mentioned, she could have been so well known and so popular and worked a lot more, that it's just a shame that that, because I had never heard of her, so I was like very interested in finding out who is she, and what did she do. So this is great. I'm so thankful to you for bringing her to my attention and to the attention of my listeners. This book sounds really amazing. I'm going to ask everyone, go out and get the book. It's just a great read. You will really enjoy it, especially if you love Hollywood and Hollywood stories and Elvis and, Star Trek. It's just, it combines all of these wonderful elements that, interest people that love the entertainment industry or that love sci-fi. So, go to Amazon. It's available on Amazon. It's also available at your local bookstore on the 18th of this month. So make sure you don't miss it, because I know you're really going to enjoy reading it. So Dr. Flynn, I am so appreciative. I have to say that preparing for the show, I had the wonderful opportunity to get to know you better. And I feel that you're such a kindred spirit.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, like how we clicked and all the things that we have in common. And you keep bringing in details of different things about Angelique and about yourself that I'm like, wow, like I relate to that, or wow, I've been there too. So it's been an absolute joy to get to know you. Is there anything that you would like to tell my listeners? Last words about yourself, about anything that you would like to say.
Well, the one thing that I would like to do for Angelique, I've written the book now, and there's an audio book coming out in a couple of weeks for those people who don't read anymore but like to listen. I would like to see a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for Angelique. It
Yeah.
costs $55,000. It's a lot of money, but I was thinking, doing one of those, you know, things where you put money aside for doing this, and if other people would donate to it, I think getting her a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for her TV, for her movies, and of course all the shows that she did in Vegas. We hardly even touched on that, but that seems to me a way that I can pay her back, and have her looking down from above
Yeah. Yeah.
at this beautiful star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That's my next project.
Great. So let us know when, if you do a GoFundMe or anything like that,
It's
let
probably
us
going to be
know.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Something like
I,
that.
I think that she deserves the credit. She's just amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Flynn, for being here with me. And hopefully I can have you back again later on so we can talk a little bit more about some of your other books, which I just love. I'm very excited about them as well. So thank you. And
Good. Yeah.
I hope
Thank
to
you
have you
so
soon.
much.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much. You have been listening to Everything Amy, and I hope you have a great week, and join me again next time.